There is an American project in the former Shah's son, Raza Pahlavi, who's there, whom they were trying to protect. Personally, President Trump didn't seem to be very impressed by him, nor are many of the Iranians, because he has been living all along in United States. So he doesn't have the back of a lot of people there. But of course, outsiders would like to bring in somebody who's more pliable. But I doubt very much that he has a very great chance at this stage, unless he's just by installed by force. By force, you can only install if you are physically on ground there, and that there is no chance that the Americans can come. Khamenei himself is now about 86 years old. He's
Mm.
also ailing. There would be a change of guard in the country. Now, what kind of a leadership comes, if it is a moderate leadership or less conservative leadership, it might have a very different connotation compared to if once again you have a very, very highly
But they
conservative
were
person.
giving signals of going softer na, through the selection of the prime minister.
Because, see, what we are seeing is in view of the internet shutdown, most of the information that you are getting is from the Iranian diaspora run or the Western narratives that are coming there that you are showing. But many people, yes, I saw some of the documentaries coming out of Iran where at the moment things appear to be reasonably okay. And so Iran will not go down. But if it has to go down, it will take everybody down. Which means what? Which means you will see the whole place burning.
Right, right.
And that is the worst thing, which worst fear for India and worst fear for the world. What he tries to do is he tries to, bombastically threaten people, hoping that the threat will work and people will fall in line. But what in Venezuela, I mean, was basically they are thinking that he's been saying under the national security strategy that US will like to focus into its own periphery. For us, India, world is of course is there, but let us also look at India. We have so many, about 9.5 to 10 million Indians. We have to look after their welfare. We are importing 60-70% at least the energy from there. That's very important. Our fertilizer imports maximum comes from West Asia. All that will come into halt. And most importantly, all the lanes of communications. We should not, irrespective. What is tactical in that? It is strategic for us. The day we move out, you will see Chinese and Pakistanis working closely with Iran, China especially. China has tremendous influence over Iran.
If the conflagration, further increases, in that case, what would be the response of Russia and China?
They will stand with Iran. You see, you saw the UN Security Council discussions recently when the Americans asked for the UNSC to discuss the issue. They
Right.
realized the Americans were the sole voice there. What should be, I mean, when you negotiate something, then you give in something somewhere, allow a country to at least have its dignity intact. But that's something at the moment, coming from the kind of position they are, the Western countries, is very difficult. I mean, with great difficulty, the previous Obama administration and other had signed up this deal, joint comprehensive partnership, nuclear deal, which we call it. And this was President Trump had actually walked out of it. And since then, he's been imposing more sanctions. That's the thing, power speaks.
But how long can it speak?
As
Because
long as
if
you are the most powerful country in the world, yes, China has stood up to them. You have seen it. And they back down. So power can only be, as long as there is a balance of power, then things can work smoothly. So, but India is doing very well, actually, in a way. Right now, it is following a policy, as far as United States is concerned, is a strategic patience.
right,
That I say is a good policy at the moment, while we have to secure our interests. We don't want to go to wars or conflicts with anybody because that will take us back economically by decades. So India
and
doesn't want to get engaged in that.
right, right, right. As I recently, so I don't know whether you noticed, I put it on Twitter that whatever we have done for last 5 years is commendable.
Yes, of course. I mean, in this kind of a scenario, under so much sanctions, to be able to continue to grow and still hold on your own.
Right.
You see, Americans have been nursing because Prime Minister Modi has spoken to him, but not asked for any favors in the process. We don't
Right.
want that. I mean, we wanted mutual respect is most important for India to serve our mutual interests. If the Americans think that India is of no use to them, So be it. We will do our bit. We have started spreading our wings around.
And
There are so many countries in the
and
world.
we have a history. More than half a
Yes.
century ago,
Yeah.
we could oppose US. Hi, welcome to Podcast with Pratim. I have with me Ambassador Anil Trigunayat. He is kind enough to join me time and again. Uh, so let's go to the subject today. Of course, we will discuss Iran. I mean, the world is boiling, it seems. Sir, what is the state of affairs now? Will this regime survive, or we are, there is apparently every sign of a kind of dictating a regime change over there. So, what is your
Thank
take?
you, Pratimji, once again for inviting me to your illustrious podcast. I really enjoy talking to you. And this is indeed a very important and a serious subject from our perspective also, as far as India is concerned. Uh, the situation in Iran essentially is twofold, or rather threefold. Number one is there is a general fatigue with the ongoing Islamic regime for more than 46 years. Youth, it's a bubbling youth which is very aspirational, which want to be globalized, and they want to have a much greater say in the affairs of the country. Secondly, due to the Western sanctions that have been going on for decades now,
Mhm.
there is definitely an
Pressure.
economic distress in the country. And that economic distress was further compounded by the cost of living going through the roof and the depreciation of the currency by 60-70%, which means the purchasing power of the people really was not there. So, which started immediately acting as a trigger
Right.
for these protests, especially from the bazaris, the traders, and in the regions. Now, third thing is, which is very important, is that this is also a part of the regime change agenda because the economic, which is genuine concerns of the people to protest against the rise in prices, rise in the budget, they proposed some 60% taxes, and that was all further going to cut the pockets of the ordinary Iranian. And therefore, this was legitimate for them to protest against the policies of the government, and their own plight needed to be heard by the powers that are. But at the same time, we know that this was being a consistent desire of the United States and Israel, which since 1979, ever since the revolution happened, Islamic revolution in Iran, both sides, Iran as well as Israel and supported by US, have been suffering from this mad syndrome. They want to finish one another. And this has been going on forever. And that's why we have seen there has been clandestine warfare, there have been overt warfare in the last year. And that's also brought in Americans to bomb this place. Last time, that did not succeed much. But then that has also emboldened a further geopolitical uh, canvas. That is, the Russians have become very much integrated into the Iranian welfare, especially through their security treaty that they signed for supporting Russia.
Mhm.
Third is China and Iran are extremely important. So the Chinese also came in and they said that they are not going to let it be like this, apart from fighting the US and the Western countries in the Security Council. So they are physically ready to support Iran. Reports indicate that several plane loads of arms and equipment and everything have been coming into Iran to support the regime. So as even as 400, some reports indicate.
Mhm.
On the other hand, you are also looking at the Americans threatening and telling the protesters that we are with you, the help is on the way, and threatening the regime that if you take any action against them, then we will be attacking you, or there'll be, as President Trump puts it in his very peculiar style, there will be grave consequences, so to say. Now, those could happen because America has done once. It is interested in completely regime change. It doesn't like the current regime because regime has just stood up to them all the time. But Iranians also know that they can't win a war here. And then the regional countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, everybody is also scared that in case the Iranians, which they had done in last June, as you know, that they bombed Israel for 12 days, even after being bombed first, and their air defense systems were decimated. The Iranians continued to pound and showed a little bit of their heft in the war by really being able to go across 1,000 kilometers and hitting the Americans, even the American base in Qatar as well as in Israel. So it is not that they are sitting ducks. So they are ready and they understand, and I think they have always been there. The nuclear deal, which President Trump walked out of, created this kind of a situation today. So President Trump wants to include their missiles, and Iran, for that matter, has done amazingly well in two domains. Number one is missile technologies, number two is drone technologies. And of course, they have enriched the uranium. They have a very good scientific background and the personnel, despite a lot of them being killed by Mossad and others. So situation was very, very volatile. Government was trying to come up with some kind of solution, but as you know, in these kind of situation where public is really agitated, they want immediate relief. It is not possible to give immediate relief to the people. You can withdraw certain things like taxes and all. But to provide the actual money in the pockets of the people is not that easy. How do you control the prices when you are under sanctions? And more sanctions have been imposed, including on the countries that do trade with them, 25%. So this kind of a situation was very difficult, but the Iranian leadership continued to hold. Now the question is whether the Iranians, this particular protest, will lead to the regime change from within. It does not look like at this moment. But definitely, what it will try to do is because now this is continuously protests have been going on. They might go again. Right now, they are subsided, but they will be once again going on. Now, the Americans have also moved a lot of naval assets in the region. So, if they want to continue to pressure, but I think that President Trump was told very clearly by the Russians, by the Chinese, by the Arab world that this will not succeed except destruction, some destruction. Nothing will happen to the regime. And when in such situations, when outside powers attack, it's normal that any country, which is especially a civilizational country, that people rise for the defense of their country. And they say that they will take care of our regime later. Of course, there is an American project in the former Shah's son, Raza Pahlavi, who's there, whom they were trying to protect. Personally, President Trump didn't seem to be very impressed by him, nor are many of the Iranians, because he has been living all along in United States. So he doesn't have the back of a lot of people there. But of course, outsiders would like to bring in somebody who's more pliable. And that's what he has announced in the change in policies, just in case he came. He invoked the Americans to come and support, Western countries to come and support. But I doubt very much that he has a very great chance at this stage, unless he's just installed by force. By force, you can only install if you are physically on ground there, and that there is no chance that the Americans can come or the Israelis can come to Iran. There's Mossad is already, I mean, their intelligence outfits have been operating in Iran. They have a very good network. And some of the attacks, some of the mosques that have been burnt and all that, the Iranians accuse them, the Mossad, for creating this. And that's why those 800 people, they said, will be executed. And now, under threat and under rethinking, I think they have decided to detain them only at this moment.
So any fall will definitely trigger wider unrest in the region. I think that's a clear message. And
Yes.
insofar as we are concerned in India, we were in good terms or developing good terms with the current dispensation. The Shah dispensation, Shah regime was not good to us. I think we don't have very good memories with that. So another change over there will definitely affect us if it happens.
Not only that, I mean, if it is a normal change, what I personally feel is that there would be perhaps some kind of an internal reform. Because, see, uh, Khamenei himself is now about 86 years old. He's
Mm.
also ailing. There would be a change of guard in the country. Now, what kind of a leadership comes, if it is a moderate leadership or less conservative leadership, it might have a very different connotation compared to if once again you have a very, very highly
But they
conservative
were
person.
giving signals of going softer no, through the selection of the prime minister.
No, no, there are right now the current president is comparatively a Pezeshkian. He's a comparative, less conservative person.
Right.
And the best part about whole thing was they said we don't want to accuse the outsiders. Yes, there are economic problems. We will try to solve them, right? So this is the admission of the problem by the leadership itself is a big change. Secondly, let us not forget in Iran, as long as the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, Iranian army, Iranian police, the Basij, they are supporting the regime. It will be very difficult to change them by the domestically.
So what is the status, sir?
No, status is the government is in place.
No, I say that
Controlling.
how strong is the internal support for the government?
No, I think there is a substantial support because see what we are seeing is in view of the internet shutdown, most of the information that you are getting is from the Iranian diaspora run or the Western narratives that are coming there that you are showing. But many people, yeah, I saw some of the documentaries coming out of Iran where at the moment things appear to be reasonably okay until unless the United States decides to pick up the threat and sort of escalates it. So until then, I think it is okay. But this is not that the problem is over. Problem is very much there, and if the economic situation is not addressed, then you are going to see it once again, maybe in a much bigger manner. It could be more volatile. Or secondly, if the regime makes the mistake or of executing the protesters or shooting more protesters down, then obviously the whole country will rise in flames. And this is what happened in Bangladesh and many other countries that happens. So we have seen. So it'll depend on how sagaciously the regime handles its domestic constituency. There are people still in support for the government. Then you have other people there. There are Baluch, there are Hazara, there are other quite a few who also are pliable,
They're
and
very
sometimes
proud
they can
people,
confront.
so outside support will always consolidate them.
Yes, that's what I said. If there was an not support, but if there is an intervention, and they realize that Iran is going to fall, and they are not foolish people; they are very educated people.
They are not
They are
going to be
and,
in the
and they are
situation
seeing
like
what's happening in Libya, what is happening in Syria, what is happening in Lebanon, what is happening in Yemen, Sudan. So they know it, and that all those places are because of the external intervention. So that's precisely the reason that they ran it. But look at this. I mean, in case, let's say hypothetically, if there is a war, and if the Americans or the Israelis jointly come and once again attack, what will Iran do? Iran has shown last time. They'll start shooting. They have said we will attack on every US base in the region. From its biggest base, Al Udeid, the Americans had to withdraw all their personnel, which is in
right,
the firing line. So, suppose you throw 10 missiles or 15 missiles, even if one hits, that's good enough for these small places. And so Iran will not go down. But if it has to go down, it will take everybody down. Which means what? Which means you will see the whole place burning.
right, right,
And that is the worst thing, which worst fear for India and worst fear for the world.
right. Uh, do you see? I mean, it's too early. I mean, from Venezuela to Iran. I mean, US was supposed, as per their strategy paper, they were supposed to, disengage, right? And particularly Middle East, it was in the on the cards for long that US will disengage. But where is the conflict? I mean, he is behaving like a neo kind of way. I mean, someone who is claiming himself as acting even in vain, even in on a lighter note, that as acting president of Venezuela, then he says, some a reporter asked about Iran that whether people have advised him or requested him. He said, "I only convince myself," kind of situation. Like, I mean, this is quite a new Trump.
No, he's like, I mean, you see, between you and me, I mean, I think that Trump does not want the conflagration of large scale wars. He's very boastful, no doubt. And he's the most powerful country in the world at the moment, which has the capacity to operate militarily anywhere. That is true. But militarily, you can't resolve any problem. You can only compound that problem. And the Americans have lost their so many wars in Afghanistan, in Vietnam, and also wherever they've gone. I mean, they've not won a great war anywhere. So, or nor does any superpower done so far. So, but at the same time, what I see is what he tries to do is he tries to, bombastically threaten people, hoping that the threat will work and people will fall in line. But what in Venezuela, I mean, was basically they are thinking that he's been saying under the national security strategy that US will like to focus into its own periphery, and that is the Western Hemisphere, which is where it wants to maintain the full control. That means what? He is looking at something like dividing the world into sort of spheres of influence once again. Like China can have East Asia, whatever it wants to do there, Taiwan and all. US, Russia can do whatever it wants in Eastern Europe and Central Asia and things like that. So I think that is, if that has been the initial thinking, that's why he wants to have G2, G3 kind of situations with China and Russia together. He's also looking at possibility of, uh, in the Middle East, the US Middle East policy actually is driven by security of Israel. Today, the only threat to Israeli security is the Iranians. So if the Iran is the threat, so they want to decimate it. That's the reason that they are trying to talk about uh, controlling their missiles, support to their proxies like the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah, etc. Now, all that has been stunted to a great extent. But Iran by itself is a major power in the region. And most of the Arab countries now want to have good relations. They are looking for their own regional security architecture, thinking that the Americans will be walking out of the Middle East soon. But somehow it is always said that Middle East has this uncanny ability to draw back the Americans every time they want to disengage. So it has not happened. We are seeing it once again. They are engaged here. They have so many bases in the region, and so many people are there. Americans, 40,000 Americans are present in the region. So they're there. But then fighting a war with Iran, do you think they can win? I doubt very much.
No, more than that, whether let's assume they fail, but their failures, whether they win or they fail, everything is costly to us,
Oh, it's going to
costly
be
to the world.
destruction, complete destruction. For us, India, world is, of course, is there, but let us also look at India. We have so many, about 9.5 to 10 million Indians. We have to look after their welfare. We are importing 60, 70% at least the energy from there. That's very important. Our fertilizer imports maximum comes from West Asia. All that will come into halt. And most importantly, all the lanes of communications, sea lanes of communications. Like Iran has the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the trade goes through that. Houthis, their allies, they are controlling the Red Sea. And they have already created a big mischief in the last 2 years for the international trade. So you can imagine that which way it will go. And if the Russians and the Chinese also come in support of Iran while the Americans and Israelis pound it here, then you can imagine that what kind of scenario we are looking at. I think we can think of it. It's shuddering. It's not something that is desirable at any stage.
So two
India also has
questions.
interest.
Two questions. One is, I think we have to step back, even if tactically, on Chabahar for the moment. Is that correct?
I really don't know, but my view is very simple. We should not, irrespective. What is tactical in that? It is strategic for us. The day we move out, you will see Chinese and Pakistanis working closely with Iran, China especially. China has tremendous influence over Iran. This is
And
the only thing that gives
we
you a
stuck to
handle to
Chabahar
Afghanistan.
for 20 years. It is only
Yes,
on this
and for
platform.
from here to Afghanistan, to Central Asia, that is your route. That's the only route available to you. Secondly, we have been trying to work on IMEC is still in the cold this thing. So we are thinking that somehow we will try to beef up the international north-south transport corridor. The fact remains is that US might even start talking to Iran again. That's what indications are, and start discussing the nuclear deal once again, which they want to do that. So if that happens, then why should we be withdrawing? For what reason? Just because the Americans want it to be? I don't think so. I hope that we don't do that.
Second thing, sir, on this line is if the conflagration, further increases, in that case, what would be the response of Russia and China?
They will stand with Iran. You see, you saw the UN Security Council discussions recently when the Americans asked for the UNSC to discuss the issue. They
Right.
realized the Americans were the sole voice there.
Okay.
Nobody wants this to be conflagrating. That's the problem. So
Right.
Iranians have to also address their own issues domestically, because they can't keep on the way it is continuing. This is not something that will stabilize the country from within. So when you have problems within, the external powers exploit their weakness.
I think one area, two areas that Iran should work on. One, it cannot keep on raising those unofficial armies called Hezbollahs and Houthis and etc. They have to stop somewhere. And second is that they have to work on their own economy.
Yes, an economy can only work if the sanctions are lifted. So
Right.
it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious
And
cycle.
sanction lifting means that Iran has to completely surrender to the American demands.
Right.
And that's unlikely to happen. What should be, when you negotiate something, then you give in something somewhere, allow a country to at least have its dignity intact. But that's something at the moment, coming from the kind of position they are, the Western countries, is very difficult. With great difficulty, the previous Obama administration and other had signed up this deal, Joint Comprehensive Partnership, nuclear deal, which we call it. And this was President Trump had actually walked out of it, and since then he has been imposing more sanctions on Iran. Of course, there are geopolitical reasons for them. Of course, there are problems in Iran, and you mentioned about these 4H, as we call them, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and Kataib Hezbollah. Now, they support them, but this is how they have created their asymmetric influence in the region. And many of them are Sunnis also, whom they are supporting and working with them. They are not all that Shias. They have sorted out their problems with Saudi Arabia. That is why this time all the Gulf countries have told President Trump that they will not allow their airspaces, and they advised him against bombing Iran. Because bombing from 30,000 feet, you are not going to change the regime just like that.
Right. Let's not forget that Israel has been fighting against Gaza for ages.
Yes.
They're lobbing those bombs to Palestine for, ever since I was a kid, I have been hearing. So it's
This is precisely the same. We have seen the United States in Afghanistan for 20 years. They
right.
came to remove Taliban, and they handed back power
It's
to
easier to
Taliban.
start a war than finishing it.
Yes, it's only India can teach
Right.
what we did in Hope Sindhu, how to terminate the
We,
war.
we also did in 1971.
Yes.
One quick intervention and out.
Yes, very true.
Sir, now back to the last part. We have barely 5 odd minutes. So you were talking, we looked at Mr. Trump, or he himself looked at it, that he will solve he will stop wars, right? That was it. But where essentially he has brought the world to is one may argue that he has actually brought the war closer to the war, because he is talking from I mean, there was always this superpower speaking kind of attitude from USA. But now the vantage point, the gambit has increased so much that the US president has been saying, and this he is saying to his NATO members, that either if you don't transfer, I'm putting a tariff on you. If you give me this piece of land, or we are going to do this.
Yeah,
I mean,
Greenland.
it's like cakewalk.
Well, the thing is that, President Trump has a style, very unorthodox style of working. I still continue to believe that he is not a warmonger per se. He does not want to go to a war really. He wants a war, threat of intervention, threat of special operations, threat of removals, threat of sanctions, tariffs. This is his toolkit. And world has to learn to live with it. I always said that if in his first term, when he was contained by his own deep state, which this time he defanged completely in the beginning. Now a new deep state is coming up, but that's what he tried to do. So whatever his agenda, which he has been saying before during the his run up to his presidency, exactly what he's doing. He's not. He said, "I'll take Greenland." He wants Greenland for Arctic. Strategically, that's what his argument is. He wants Iran to be contained because he wants to secure Israel. He wants Panama because China should not be present there. He wants Mexico because drugs are there, immigration is there. So whatever his policies, we may disagree with that. His style may not be amenable to us because it does not respect international law. It does not respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the countries. It's only America's interest. So America first means just
So
everybody
that is
succumbs to
where the problem is, sir. I
that.
mean,
Yes, that's a problem. No doubt. You are rightly. That what happened is,
I mean, you are saying that he is not a warmonger, but actually this is warmongering, because you are
no,
pushing someone so hard that he has to defend it.
he may defend, but at the same time, is he capable of defending? Now you imagine what is happening in Greenland. He had the Danish and the Greenland foreign ministers there. They were there in the US recently, time talk. He says, I'll pay $1 trillion and I'll buy out the place. He's saying, telling the NATO, if you guys don't support me, he's already put 10% tariff on 10 countries who have been opposing it directly. And he'll go up to 25% from June 1st if he's not able to secure this. The best way was to work with them closely. Because if you want to go against Russia and China in that place, it would have been better if all the Denmark and everybody else, all these NATO countries, would have been collaboratively increasing their presence there in the Arctic so that they can have a greater influence there. But he chose that, okay, I know what is best for me, and therefore I want to do it this way. It's not in a collaborative manner, it's more transactional approach that he has applied with every country, including with India.
I mean, imagine the life of a Greenlander. I mean, they are no one. Just
56,000 of them only.
yeah, but no one has asked for their consent. I mean, USA is asking Germany and this and that, and it is done.
So but that's the thing, power speaks.
But how long can it speak?
As
Because
long as you are the most powerful country in the world, yes, China has stood up to them. You have seen it. And they back down. So power can only be, as long as there is a balance of power, then things can work smoothly. But when there is no balance of power, you have a problem in the global workplace.
so essentially, it will lead to, now what we are seeing is just the beginning of a problem. One country has thrown the rule book, whatever it was, out of the window. So next, it is going to be China.
Yes.
And then when China does, it is directly India, China.
Mhm. Not only India, China, there will be the new Cold War, which will start soon, in my view, or already in operation, one will be led by China, other by the United States. It's already working. He's looking at this G2 scenario, which we may call it, but it's a Cold War kind of a thing. Chinese also want to have, they have come up with a new global doctrine for themselves, which is called Global Governance Initiative, Global Security Initiative, Global Developmental Initiative, Global Civilization Initiative, Belt and Road Initiative. So Chinese are planning to assume that bigger role that they are aiming for. And the Americans are basically Western countries are in a decline in that sense of the term, not only in the human resource dividend or the population wise, but otherwise also. And when you are going against immigration means you are not even ready to accept the best who had really brought your country to this level. So it is like,
Yeah,
in a way,
America is the land
harakiri.
of immigrants, it was told.
Yes. So you are doing yourself a harm. That's the thing by certain policies. But then you know that we have had leaders in the world who have been doing whatever they want to do and get away with it also. So today, in a way, unfortunately, the international law or rule-based order, as we knew since after the World War II, has been decimated, dismantled by the very powers
Who
who had
created it?
crafted it.
Right,
So it's an irony of the system.
right. So,
So everybody is at the receiving end.
right. So, quickly, sir, that where does India stand then in terms of it also had the ambition to be a power.
It is a power. I mean, we are still continuing to be the fastest
To,
growing major economy.
no,
And that's
that's
where
okay.
India's power will be.
But now it is it is like kind of hard power that you have to throw on another power. That is the kind of situation.
I don't think it's simply hard power. You see, if you are economically weak, then whatever hard power you have will not work. So it has to be a global comprehensive power. You have to have a comprehensive power, which means economic power, which means military power, which means your technological power, prowess, which means your internal cohesion in the country. So until unless you all have that, you can't be a big power or a power to confront in that sense. So, but India is doing very well, actually, in a way. Right now, it is following a policy, as far as United States is concerned, is a strategic patience.
Right.
That I say is a good policy at the moment, while we have to secure our interests. We don't want to go to wars or conflicts with anybody because that will take us back economically by decades. So India
And
doesn't want to get engaged in that.
right, right, right. As I recently, so I don't know whether you noticed, I put it on Twitter that whatever we have done for last 5 years is commendable.
Yes, of course. I mean, in this kind of a scenario, under so much sanctions, to be able to continue to grow and still hold on your own.
Right.
You see, Americans have been nursing because Prime Minister Modi has spoken to him, but not asked for any favors in the process. We don't
Right.
want that. I mean, we wanted mutual respect is most important for India to serve our mutual interests. If the Americans think that India is of no use to them, so be it. We will do our bit. We have started spreading our wings around.
And
There are so many countries in the
and
world.
we have a history. More than half a
Yes.
century ago,
Yeah.
we could oppose US.
Yeah. We don't have to oppose the US, but we oppose the policies, certain policies that are so autocratic in nature, so irrational, that they are decimating the world order completely. India still believes in multilateralism and multipolarity. Americans, on the face of it, say yes, there is a multipolar world. There are many powers, but in practice, they really don't want it.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for
Right?
joining. I mean, we don't really know. I mean, this is going to be a decade of restructuring, reconstruction. I don't know how to describe it. The most happening decade, probably. World War was more on visuals, more on human tragedies, etc. But this is going to be far more intense, in my understanding, because it is taking economics so hard.
Yes, I mean, I think that currently we are seeing that power, which is number one, wants to retain its position. Power number two wants to displace it, and along with power number three, in that sense. So situation is in a flux. That's the best way to put it today. Uh, Especially, and we will continue to witness a lot of autonomous resort to actions by countries against whatever law that we thought is the international law. No institution is functioning today in a way. I mean, when it involves these big powers.
And one area we all missed out or are not probably underplaying is US itself. We always thought about whether China will go burst, this and that, but US domestic politics is not in very good shape. Serious
Yeah, they will realize
contradictions
it
within.
themselves. Not only politics, the economics. They will realize it very soon. This is the most indebted country in the world. And the kind of policies they have followed might coil back on them.
Right,
So, I mean, you will realize the impact would be far outreaching for themselves, not only, and if that happens there, it also impacts the whole world. Like if China disintegrates, the whole world will go down.
right.
It's also the problem in this kind of a scenario. So, we need to
This
find some kind of a stabilization everywhere and a balance, which is very important. That's
right.
what India is seeking, I guess.
I still remember the impact of the collapse of the USSR.
Yes, you've
Huge.
seen it. Yes. We have all in our lifetimes, we have seen so many things. Technology is going to decide the future of the world.
Thanks, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pratimji.
Bye.
Thank you so much.